Recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to join many of my Democratic colleagues to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and to ask this House to pass legislation for voting rights now. Mr. Speaker, this was the first nation in our history to be founded with a purpose. Great phrases of that purpose are still being said and quoted around the world from the souls and hearts of Americans. All men are created equal. Give me liberty or give me death. Those words were not to be revered as meaningless, to ring hollow over the years. Today, I join my colleagues as guardians of that liberty and advocates for voting rights legislation. Mr. Speaker, 50 years ago before Congress, President LBJ said, "I want to be the president who helped the poor find their way and who protected the right of every citizen to vote in every election." Every citizen must have an equal right to vote. There is no reason we can excuse the denial of that right. There is no duty that weighs more heavily on us than the duty we have to ensure that right. End of quote. Mr. Speaker, from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, Martin Luther King delivered his "Give Us the Ballot." That speech urging the President and members of Congress to ensure voting rights for African Americans. He indicted both political parties for betraying the cause of justice. He said, "Let us be reminded of these words. The Democrats have betrayed it by capitulating to the prejudice and undemocratic practices of the Southern Dixiecrats. The Republicans have betrayed it by capitulating to the blatant hypocrisy of the right wing, reactionary Northerners. These men so often have a high blood pressure of words and an anemia of deeds. Today, I ask Democrats and Republicans to come together for voting rights legislation now. Over the past 50 years, our country has come a long way to end the Jim Crow, integration of our public schools, and the election of our first Black president. While we have made great progress over the past 50 years, we must continue to fight for justice and equality at the polls. In the past few presidential elections, we have seen long lines, intimidation, and voter suppression. We must remain diligent in our efforts to root out voting discrimination because of the Supreme Court misguided decision in 2013 in Shelby County versus Holder matter, and the failure of Congress to remedy this dismantling of the nation's fundamental right. We must be more vigilant than ever. 2 years ago in Shelby, the Supreme Court struck down a critical part of the Voting Rights Act. Some would say it cut the heart of the Voting Rights Act by finding Section 4 unconstitutional. This was a setback to our country and to our democracy by removing much-needed voter protections and disenfranchised communities. Our democracy was founded on the audacious idea that every eligible citizen should have access to the ballot box. This is why I am proud to stand with over 70 bipartisan congressional colleagues as an original co-sponsor of the Voting Rights Advancement Act of 2015, H.R. 2867, which would restore and advance the critical voter protections taken away by the Shelby decision. Mr. Speaker, it is time for us to bring voting rights legislation now to the floor. More than ever, with just 7 legislative days left, we head back to our districts for our August work period. Congress should have the honor, the progress of being able to allow us to say to our constituents, to this nation, that our country has made sure that there is equal rights and equal treatment. Let us work together on advancing important legislative priorities such as the Voting Rights Amendment Act. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields back. The chair recognizes